Got a lot of readings for us today. I'm going to jump in with this one. We're focusing on the crowd who threw down their coats and the palm branches as Jesus comes into Jerusalem. And then in a minute, we're going to look at the other crowd who turned on him. But let's start with the Palm Sunday crowd. Those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. And there they were untying the colt. Its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" And they replied, "The Lord needs it." And they brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. And he went along. People spread out their cloaks on the road. And when he came near the place where the road goes down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles that they had seen. "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." Now I know that the crowd who called for Jesus' crucifixion, some of them might have been the same people, many were not. But the crowd is kind of like this anonymous grouping that we are part of that can be very easily swayed and manipulated by self-serving leaders. So here's the story of the morning of Good Friday. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and he said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence, and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him and then release him." But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then release him." But with loud shouts they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murdered the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. I almost read that right. Forgive me for not always reading it quite right. The crowd of people in Jerusalem goes from a royal welcome to calling for the murder of an innocent man. I've never felt comfortable in crowds. They are unpredictable and highly charged. I think perhaps some of you will be able to relate to that. But I think my biggest problem with the crowd has been my struggle to find peace, a place of belonging in the larger society. The spiritual truth is that we are one, while the spiritual truth is also that we are many, and the reality is that we are many. We are different, and we are diverse from one another. And worse than this, humans can be splintered within themselves and within groups. We can turn on ourselves and we can turn on each other very easily. A scapegoat is a real thing. Now, many of you in the congregation have asked me to bring into the sermons on our worship the fact that this nation is really split right now. There's a big division between pro and anti-Trump beliefs. And Easter is an opportunity for us to bring into wholeness that which is divided, that which is unbearable for us. And in doing this, there's a huge paradox here. Um, on one hand, there's Ubuntu, right? This uh, force of unitive consciousness and harmony. And then on the other, there's this need, we lose our authentic identity because we're seeking validation from others. So people can give us truth, but we can lose it by seeking for that truth in others. It's this um, paradox that I think there is a still point in the middle, a sweet point. And I think that the way that Jesus responds to the anonymous crowd is pointing directly at that sweet spot. In the cultures where I have lived, I've seen us plagued by individualism. I grew up during Thatcherite era in Scotland. And what I see, and I see it here in America, and I saw it in Australia too, is people needing approval from others. And while at the same time being radically individual in their choices and passions. And I think this is an ego problem, right? It's entitlement is a way that we talk about this, a hubris way of thinking that somewhere is there's low self-esteem and an inflated ego, and we're teeter-tottering between the two, and there has to be a way to bypass that to get to the middle sweet spot. Albert Einstein said, "The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he or she has attained liberation from the self." The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he or she has attained liberation from self. I studied psychology, so I would put the word ego in there, but words are words. I think Einstein is pointing to the fact that we need to try on a bigger mind. This isn't just about you and me. Instead, we need to align our sights on service, the greater good, and on that which is sacred, which is naturally unitive, naturally in reciprocity and balance with everything else. I think the way that Jesus responds to the crowd is very powerful, but he kind of doesn't respond. He doesn't let the energy touch him. In both the crazy crowd welcoming him and then the other frantic crowd calling for him to be killed, he kind of ignores them. It's almost like he's focusing on his sacred task instead and accounting only his own behavior. I think of it as a unitive way of thinking, and it's really important that we learn to do this in times when we're surrounded by the crowd or also when we are tested by our own lives. Richard Rohr says this: "Love flows unstoppably downward around every obstacle, like water. Love and water seek not the higher place, but always the lower." Humility is how to navigate the crowd, and humility is also how to navigate our times of trial. I've got a really lovely quote on this from the master Lao Tzu. Let me get that up for you. "The best, like water, benefit all and do not compete. They dwell in the lowly spots that everyone else scorns, putting others before themselves. They find themselves in the foremost place and come very near to the Tao. In their dwelling, they love the earth. In their heart, they love what is deep. In personal relationships, they love kindness. In their words, they love truth. In the world, they love peace. In personal affairs, they love what is right. In action, they love choosing the right time. It is because they do not compete with others that they are beyond the reproach of the world. I find that most interesting. Now, that's a whole philosophy to live by. That's really getting into the Tao. But it really touches on humility and I think on the way that Jesus navigates his passion. Um, Richard Rohr and others from the Center for Contemplation and Action often quote this passage from Philippians, which I think is, getting to that thing about water and the Tao. Let the same mind be in you that was in Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness. And being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death. Hmm. Humility is a process and not an end goal, right? I think sometimes we look at ourselves when we're not being, where humility is completely out of reach and it can seem insurmountable. Um, One of the people I learn about humility from is Saint Teresa of Avila, and Caroline Miss is one of the people who's taught me about her. Caroline Miss is quite a grumpy teacher, and she's always telling people to humble up. But Teresa of Avila would say that hubris or your pride gives the spirit of evil a free pass to run amok through your life. Here's a quote from Saint Teresa. Humility must always be doing its work like bees making honey in the hive. Without humility, all will be lost. The problem is sometimes our ego gets in the way, usually because we're on that teeter-totter. It's overly inflated, or we're undermining ourselves with the tragic victim story that we tell. These voices within us are super powerful and take us out of the precious moment. And they take us into the ego narrative of who and what we think we are. And in the blink of an eye, we have turned our back on what is possible, what is becoming, and instead we are looking at a tunnel of our own thoughts, keeping us small once again. Now, I'm not denying that we have lives and egos. We're meant to. We're meant to have names and stories. These are very powerful. But within our story of our lives, no matter how dreadful the circumstance, we need to make space. God's transformation and healing is present and waiting for us in the wings to bring peace, to bring wholeness and acceptance to that which we cannot heal and find peace with. So I'm going to sing about this because I've been talking for a bit and I want us to have a break. We're going to sing a lovely song by my friend Alana Lewandowski, which just fell off the music stand. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Let there be light, let there be light. God unseen is taking form. God unseen is taking form. God unseen is taking form. Let there be light, let there be light. First and last is surging forth. First and last is searching forth. The first and last He is searching forth, becoming life, becoming life. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Let there be light, let there be light. Easter. The mystery of Easter is a very special portal in time because through his life and death and dying, Jesus was able to bring the Christ, or the oneness with God, into his form. And was he the only one who's ever done this? Well, that's up to you to decide. I believe others have also achieved this. But there's something about what Jesus lived into his death um, that reordered our human experience. A door to the sacred opened, and a new way was found for all of us, a new path. In Matthew 27, they say, "At that moment the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split." More on that next week. What I want to get to right now in talking about humility and the crowd is oneness. And I'm going to go to introduce Julian of Norwich to us now. Now, Julian of Norwich is an English saint. She's pretty amazing. I'm only beginning to learn about her. The person who talks about her in a way that really comes alive for me is Richard Rohr, and he has a blog that I'm going to post here in the chat on Zoom. If you are on Facebook, Google Julian of Norwich with a J, Julian of Norwich, and Richard Rohr, and you might find it. Now, Julian of Norwich uses the word "wanting" to describe sacred union. She writes, "The soul is precisely knitted to him in its making by a knot so subtle and so mighty that it is oned into God. In this wanting, it is made endlessly holy." I didn't change the language there because I haven't read the original. I don't know whether Julian is referring to Jesus or to God when she says him. So forgive me for the patriarchal language. She also says, "By myself I am nothing at all, but in general I am the wanting of love. For it is in this wanting that the life of all people exists. The love of God creates in us such a wanting that when it is truly seen, no person can separate themselves from another person. In the sight of God, all humans are one, and one person is all people, and all people are in one person." Julian survived the bubonic plague, right? She's a great teacher for us in how COVID can help wake us up to our own wanting. And I'm bringing this up right now because Good Friday, 3 o'clock on Good Friday, is the time that the church celebrates, or marks, might be a better name, marks Jesus' death. The story is that Jesus died quite quickly on the cross, which supposedly in crucifixion terms is a blessing. Some people are there for a long time. And there's certain rituals that are done around 3 o'clock on a Friday around reconciliation and bringing back into oneness shattered parts of ourselves. And I'm going to invite us as a community to do a Good Friday ritual that we used to do in the Abbey on Iona. It was called the penitential rite, which I think in traditional terms is a prayer of confession. But remember, when I lived in the Abbey, I didn't have any background in Christianity, so I just saw what I saw. And what I saw as the fire keeper, there was a Easter candle at the foot of the cross. And this had happened after the time that we marked Jesus being crucified, but before he died. And people would come forward with their burdens written on pieces of paper, and they would burn them. And occasionally a little fire would create, and that's my job, was to put out, to bring sand so that nothing got too crazy. But mostly I just tried to get out of the way because people were presenting their most tender prayers, and their hope for healing for situations that they could not heal themselves. It was a very profound thing to witness. And a really big part of that is about forgiveness, and forgiveness from a really big concept, not just somebody did something wrong and you learn to forgive it. Forgiveness in there are fractures within ourselves and within our society that only God can help us choose love over the pain. And I've got a video that we're going to look at, which is another teaching from Brene Brown. I've been using her a lot during Lent because I think she's such a good teacher for us right now. And she very clearly says to me why forgiveness is really important on Good Friday. And then after we've watched the video, I will tell you how to do the penitential rite yourself on Good Friday if you'd like to. But first, let's hear from Brene, and I'd love it if you give me a thumbs up to tell me you can hear this.
Do we have to die to live? Oh yeah. 1,000 deaths. Yeah, because rebirth, right? And I'm not talking just in a Christian metaphor here. I don't care if you're agnostic or Muslim or Jewish. Rebirth. There has to be. We have to bury things and we have to grieve them, and they have to go away for good. That's death, and then something new is born of it. But yeah, absolutely.
Except the revolution can come through death to get the rebirth. But
yeah. No, yeah. And let me tell you, rebirth's not easy, and death is not easy. And I've been working for a decade trying to figure out forgiveness, but I could never, as a qualitative researcher, we look for saturation, meaning we keep getting the same answers over and over as we interview people, to the point where we believe that it's a valid and reliable answer, and that it's broad enough to capture everyone's experiences. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to solve forgiveness. And then one day I was
You woke up one day trying to solve forgiveness?
I spent a decade trying to solve it. But one day, it's a lot of mornings. But one day I did solve it. I was at church and I was listening to Joe Reynolds, who is an Episcopal priest, telling stories about forgiveness and his experience doing pastoral counseling. And he said, in order for forgiveness to happen, something has to die. And I was like, I literally put my hands over my face. I was like, oh my God, the one concept or construct that I had left out it was the reason why forgiveness was never whole in my work was grief. The reason why forgiveness is so hard is because in order for us to forgive, something has to die and we have to grieve something. And so I went back into the data, had a couple of doctoral students with me, and we started looking, and it was the grief all through. It was the grief. It was, he was telling the story about a couple where the guy had an affair, and neither one of them wanted the marriage to end, but he couldn't let go of the shame, and she couldn't let him let go of the shame, and she couldn't let go of the rage. And, Joe just said, you're going to have to bury and kill off this marriage as you know it today, and grieve the loss of what this was in order for something new to be born. It's not ever going to be the same again. And I have goosebumps telling it. And when I went back, and even if it's forgiveness of someone you care about says something really hurtful about you, you have to bury the idea that that person doesn't have the capacity to hurt you or that wouldn't hurt you. And then something new has to be born. And maybe it's deeper and richer and more beautiful, or maybe it's not going to be born, and maybe there's just a death and a loss. But the people who've truly forgiven, and then what was crazy, I don't even write about this in the book, but what was crazy is the Tutus, Archbishop Tutu and Reverend Tutu, his daughter, sent me an early copy of their book on forgiveness. And I'm reading it on a plane, and they sent it to me, I think, because they quote some of my work about shame. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God. They don't say something has to die, but they talk about the grief that's inherently important in forgiveness. And they talk about the truth and reconciliation in South Africa, and they talk about what they've seen around forgiveness, and it just fit. I mean, I make the recommendation of their book in Rising Strong and say it's one of the most important books I've read in my life. But grief is an inherent part of forgiveness. Sometimes we just have to kill off and bury being right, and the power that comes from being, and the juice that we get from being right in order for forgiveness to happen. Which means the willingness to kill something off or bury something and grieve it makes being forgiven the ultimate act of love. Right? Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's powerful.
Perhaps you can see why this work of forgiveness is so important for social justice, for our ability to navigate life, for everything. For everything. Forgiveness is huge. Bringing into peace, finding peace where there is no peace. And Good Friday is a very important time because it can help us carry through death into resurrection and wholeness, parts of ourselves, parts of our own wounding as a society. So I've pasted into the chat the webpage, the secret webpage. It's simondevoyle.com/Suquamish. And that video is there, and also this following suggestion for a Good Friday ritual, which is at 3 o'clock on Good Friday. I invite you to think about something in yourself, in your own story, in society that you cannot find peace with. Something that you can't forgive on your own. There's no point doing this if you've already forgiven it. This is for that which we cannot bring into wholeness. And identify a burden or situation and write it on a piece of paper. And I suggest you either place that piece of paper in the ocean, in the water, into the earth, or burn it in a candle and release that and ask Christ to take your cross with him into resurrection. And we'll pick up that piece again later with Easter Sunday. I'd like to close with a prayer that I've used before. It's by Rev Kaja Dusa. Forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, Kaja. Dear God, you transform all that is before you, so that at the touch of your grace we are never the same. Dear God, you illumine, you bring light to all people, light to the nations, light to our hearts, light on your way. Dear God, we pray for your Spirit to transform, illumine, and bless us. Amen. I want to thank this congregation for helping me honor people's prayers, especially to Jane for and Kathy for steering me in the right direction. Um, I'm going to bring our time to close with a song. This one is from Taizé in France. Taizé is an abbey, a modern day abbey. And I thought it might be a good mantra for us as we go into Holy Week. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. And if you don't like the word Lord, love is a good substitute. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. One more time. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. Now, this is going to be a bit of a spoiler alert, but the song for next week is Christ the Lord is Risen Today. But I think you'll probably know that part of the Easter story anyway. And if you would like to be one of the singers, Janelle and Kathy and Al and quite a few of you have sent me recordings. You're welcome to add your voice to that. Speak to Kathy if you don't know anything about that. And next week we will have communion and we'll tell the story of Maundy Thursday. Look out for Kathy's e-letter tomorrow because there'll be lots of resources in it, some by me, some by others. And I wish you really well. This Holy Week is very difficult for me to be so far away because, you know, Holy Week is such a huge thing and is so much about coming together. So I will be holding you all very, very close in my heart and prayers this Holy Week. Deep peace of the rolling waves to you. Deep peace of the silent stars. Deep peace of the blowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth. Let peace, let peace, let peace fill your soul. May peace, may peace, may peace keep you whole. We release this time of worship to coffee hour, and I'm going to have to run, but I'll see you next Sunday. Take care, everybody.